I think my husband fathered his best friend's children, and now one of them is attracted to my daughter. All names are fake. This began as a dark, intrusive thought that I could never shake off, and over the years it has bloomed into a poison flower that infects my entire psyche. I'm a 42-year-old woman. My husband Luke is 43, and so is Amy. I met Luke in college, but he's known Amy since they were about 7. They did everything together and understood each other implicitly. They were best friends. They've always insisted that they are surrogate siblings to each other. Naturally, I, as a new girlfriend, felt a little threatened by Amy and her closeness to Luke, but they both reassured me I had nothing to worry about, that their bond was not romantic and had never been intimacy, that Amy really was just the sister that Luke never had. I believed them, and it didn't take long for me to forget any and all insecurity I had about Amy. She became my friend too. She officiated our wedding. Luke and I have built a wonderful life together, and we always had a strong relationship. After we got married and moved in together, we still saw a lot of Amy, and I was fine with that. I've passed many a night on the town trying to help Amy find a man, as she has always lamented how she is unlucky in love. Luke and I started to have children after we were married, and at around the same point, so did Amy. For further context, my children are Sophie, 15, Owen, 12, Louise, 10, and Carter, 6. Amy's children are Tom, 17, Kaylee, 14, and twins Adam and Jenna, 9. Now, Amy was not in a relationship at this point. She was not married. As far as I knew, she was dating, but not consistently. As Luke and I had more kids and our family grew, periodically Amy would find herself pregnant as well. It happened a few times, and Luke and I never knew anything about the fathers in question. I kind of assumed that maybe Amy was sleeping around and not keeping in contact with her one-night stands. Luke agreed this was probably the answer. While I did ask each time if Amy knew the paternity, she always said no, and she didn't seem that worried about the idea of raising kids on her own, so I didn't pester her. Of course, she had us to support her, so there was that. While Amy never asked for any help, of course, Luke was never going to let his best friend struggle to stay afloat when she had children to raise. Financially, we are very fortunate and privileged. I have a job that pays handsomely, and Luke also had wealthy parents who already knew and loved Amy, so they were happy to provide for her. My in-laws defy all stereotypes. They are the kindest and gentlest people, so we were able to support Amy, to get her somewhere to stay with her kids. People might be tempted to call her a leech, but I never saw it that way. None of us did. She needed help, and we could provide it. I also know people are going to criticize her for her lack of responsibility and question why she never used more reliable birth control. Honestly, that is a long story that I don't want to get into because even I don't fully understand her reasoning, but it was quite important to her that she never be on birth control, and that whatever came of that choice, she would accept. It wasn't religiously motivated, I know that, but it was that degree of significance to Amy. She really did not want to take birth control. She's explained it to me more than once, but I'm still not clear on why. Of course, Amy being Luke's best friend since they were kids, it's not unreasonable that sometimes they hang out together while I'm not there. Hey, that's fine. Sometimes I hang out with Amy one-on-one as well, though Luke does it more. She was his friend first. This included him going over to where she was staying, and at times, sleeping over there. Was I a fool to trust him and believe nothing was going on? Perhaps. But for years they presented as being buddies, like siblings. I didn't pick up on any vibes between them, not ever. As one can expect, our children were brought up together, not in the same house. Our home is decently sized, but even we don't have the room for 8 kids. But we made sure Amy's children met ours from a young age, and they always got along, and strong bonds of friendship have formed over the years. Which is good, especially if I'm right, and they share blood. I've been dawdling getting to the main point. Yes, I have come to suspect that Luke fathered at least one of Amy's kids, if not all of them. Frankly, I do suspect they are all his. I would never have believed my husband to be capable of such a thing, and he's given me no indication that he is the unfaithful sort. But he does spend a lot of time with Amy, and I have to confess, I cannot remember seeing her with any real boyfriend over the years. She would talk to men at bars and parties, I would try to be her wingman, and so on. But nothing ever seemed to really happen, so when she got pregnant the first time, I was curious. When it happened again and again, I began to wonder if she had some sort of secret fella who she didn't want us to know about for whatever reason. But I couldn't think of any reason why she would hide him, especially from her children. After Carter, our youngest, was born, Luke and I agreed that the time had come for him to have a vasectomy. Amy's twins had come just a couple of years prior. Of course, after the procedure, Luke and I continued to make love, but I no longer had to think about pregnancy. Meanwhile, Amy never got pregnant again after the twins. Is it a coincidence that Luke had a vasectomy and then both of us stopped getting pregnant? I don't know, but Luke would still visit her, and he wasn't just going to see her, but checking up on her children as well. In general, I should have paid more attention to it sooner, but Luke has always acted like a father to them, especially as they've gotten older. He's the father they never had. He doesn't neglect me or our children, not one bit. He's doing double duty. On its own, the idea that he is a surrogate father to Amy's fatherless children isn't inherently suspicious. One could call it noble, but it combines with a lot of other little things. There is appearance as well. I won't go into specifics of hair color, eye color, or unique physical traits, because I'd rather limit the identifying factors of the people involved and keep this whole thing as vague as possible. But suffice it to say, Amy's children, they certainly look like they could be Luke's. Kaylee has a very unusual allergy that Luke also has. The twins look very much like him, Adam in particular. The older Tom has gotten, the more of Luke I can see in his face and personality. While their race doesn't matter, the reality is that Luke is a different race than Amy, and Amy's children look pretty biracial. I could easily believe their father is the same race as Luke. Doesn't mean Luke has to be the father, but it sure seems like it. I have never voiced my anxieties to either Amy or Luke. I don't want to be the bad guy, and guilty or innocent, I already know they would flatly deny my accusations and be hurt by them. Imagine if that drama reached the ears of my kids or Amy's kids. Either way, Luke continues to spend time with Amy and her children, just as her children spend time with mine. I have hinted to Luke that I feel needy for more attention and wish he wouldn't give as much to Amy, but he either missed my cues or pretended that he missed them. I don't want to push this idea that he's favoring her, because it's not even really true. He's never neglected me for her. I can't shake the feeling that Luke and Amy have been intimate before, likely numerous times. Now for the update. It's been a few days since I posted here, and I've been reading some of the comments. It's honestly been a little overwhelming, but I appreciate everyone who took the time to respond. I've decided to take a DNA test for my children. I haven't told Luke yet, and I'm not sure how he'll react. I'm scared, but I need to know the truth. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "Your story is heartbreaking. I hope you find the peace you're looking for." When asked if she had considered talking to a therapist, she replied, "I have, and I think it's a good idea. I just need to find the right time to bring it up with Luke." Another commenter suggested, "Maybe you should confront Amy directly. She might be more willing to tell the truth." Then OP replied, "I'm considering it, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for that conversation yet." Now for the 3-day update. I confronted Luke last night. I told him everything, my suspicions, my fears, and that I planned to do a DNA test. He was shocked and hurt. He denied everything, of course, but he agreed to the test. We're going to do it together. I don't know what the results will be, but I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders just by taking this step. Then, a few commenters did some digging and found that Amy had mentioned in an old post that she and Luke once had a drunken night together years ago. This only adds to my suspicions, but I'm trying to stay calm and wait for the DNA results before jumping to any conclusions. That's all for now. So far as I know, Amy never really wanted to be a mother either. She wasn't opposed to it, and when each of her children came into the world, she instantly fell in love with them. But motherhood was never really a major part of her life plan or identity. In the grand scheme of things, when we would talk about the future, she would sometimes mention a husband and children, but it never seemed like something she had her heart particularly set on. So, I don't think this is a case of Luke just giving Amy children. I doubt that was the motive for the infidelity. That would have been a side effect. I've been letting this go and turning a blind eye for years. It was a dark thought in the back of my mind after Kaylee's allergy was discovered, but I dismissed it. Got worse after the twins were born. I dismissed it. Then, when Amy stopped having babies, I wanted to feel reassured by that. But Luke had gotten a vasectomy, so if anything, that made my anxiety worse. There have been nights that I wished the twins were younger, that they had come along after Luke's procedure. It's been twisting me into knots for a long time, but I don't want to be the one who rips our family apart, especially since, technically, I could be wrong. Except now I'm very afraid, because in the last few months, we've had a new development in our kids' social circle. Tom, Amy's eldest, asked Sophie out. Sophie, my eldest. She's really blossomed over these last few years and become quite the outspoken beauty, so I'm not shocked to see she's getting male attention, but Tom asking her out had me thrown. Sophie said no, but only because I'm quite protective when it comes to her exploring dating, and she knew she'd have to ask me first. I could tell she was flattered and intrigued by his interest and wanted to say yes. She approached me to talk to me about it. Bless my girl, she did everything right. I think she expected I would see things her way and agree that she could date Tom. Much to her surprise, I very firmly said no. That caused a bit of conflict. She didn't even want to date him that badly. She just couldn't understand why she wasn't allowed to, and I couldn't explain it to her. All I could come up with was, he's too old for you, which he is, but it's not really about that. When Amy and Luke heard, I was so very curious to see what their reactions would be. If either of them had agreed with Sophie and tried to convince me that the two of them should be allowed to date, I think I would have been relieved and taken that as proof that I was wrong about something going on between them. Wrong about who fathered Amy's children. But the ambiguity continued. They took my side. Both of them put their foot down, though not as fiercely as I did. Luke agreed with me, but he also worried that trying to forbid such a romance would only make Sophie want it more. He's probably right about that. Amy seemed more apathetic to the idea. She didn't want Tom to date Sophie either, and she backed me up. But I don't know, she just wasn't taking it as seriously. She seemed to think it was a fleeting crush. Well, it wasn't. In the months following those conversations, Tom would spend more and more time with Sophie. They would be alone, or with other friends, anytime they possibly could. It's become abundantly clear that Tom is crazy about Sophie and wants to be with her. And he definitely wants to be physical. I've been watching them like a hawk and noticed his eye wandering many times. And while I'm doing everything I can to unalive this budding romance in the crib, I also am feeling somewhat powerless. Sophie hasn't outwardly defied me. She's still just hanging out with Tom as friends. So forcing them to stop spending time together would be unreasonable and probably encourage more sneaking around. But I'm so afraid that they're already doing that. My nightmare is that they're secretly dating and doing God knows what when no one is looking. I've observed Tom being rather handsy with Sophie, and she presents no objection whatsoever. And I just don't know what to say. I had considered trying to convince Sophie that Tom is like her brother, but if she doesn't see him that way, I don't really have the power to rewrite their emotional dynamic or the history of their friendship. I always saw Amy and her children as being like family, but my kids might see Amy's kids more as best friends. The problem is, of course, that if my husband has indeed been carrying on an affair over the years, and I'm right about the paternity of Amy's children, then Tom and Sophie cannot be anything more than friends under any circumstances. End of discussion. It can never happen. I feel powerless to stop it, though. Luke has apparently talked to Tom about this, as has Amy, but he is unrelenting and he won't give up on Sophie. I think she enjoys that attention and devotion. Tom has also confronted me and asked why I'm so against this when I know him very well and I know he would be good to Sophie. I didn't know what to say other than to fall back on her being too young for him, but that won't work forever. If, God forbid, they're still attracted to each other in a few years, then they'll pursue this with abandon. And once they're legal adults, there's nothing I can do about it. Amy and Luke agree with me that Tom cannot date Sophie, but that's all they've really done. They feel just as powerless as me to prevent teen love. It genuinely feels sometimes like they've just given up and will bury their heads in the sand about this. Just do nothing and hope the feelings pass as Tom and Sophie get older. Which, yeah, they're in high school. It's unlikely Tom will be in love with Sophie forever. But my fear is that she'll let him do something intimate with her before that time comes, something neither of them can take back. I am this close to opening a door I cannot close, this close to screaming at Luke that all this wouldn't be happening if he hadn't cheated on me these many years. If he hadn't been all but raising a second family with his surrogate sister behind my back. Now Luke's son wants to frick our daughter, his actual sister, because as far as he knows, she's just his childhood friend. And it's all Luke and Amy's fault for what they've done. If I speak up, everything gets blown to hell. On the off chance that I am wrong, I'm a horrible monster who accused the love of my life and one of my closest friends of doing something horrible. If I'm right, it still tears our entire structure apart. The family and social unit we've become over the last several years is gone, and everyone will be stressed and upset even if Luke and I don't divorce. If I do nothing, Sophie's eventually going to sleep with Tom and be his girlfriend. And I'm low-key terrified it will happen sooner than later, or worse, that it's already happened under my nose. I hope to hell this relationship fades as they mature, but what if it doesn't? What if they wind up being together for years? What if they marry, want to get pregnant someday? And if I tell Sophie the truth about Amy's kids, then everyone else finds out too, and that's going to ruin so many lives. It would shatter my kids' perception of their father and their Aunt Amy. Luke is Owen's hero. I don't even want to think about how much this would hurt him. And what about Amy's children? They are innocent. They didn't ask for this. They don't control where they came from, and I don't want to hurt them. Admittedly, I'm not happy with Tom at the moment. A week ago, I saw him put his hand on Sophie's butt, and I wanted to knock his teeth out. But even he doesn't deserve to be burdened by the knowledge that it's his half-sister he's been fantasizing about. It's all so fricked up, and I don't know what to do. I've been looking the other way and letting my husband and his best friend insult me for such a long time now. I thought I could live with it. But this business with Tom and Sophie has me distressed. Now for a few important comments. One commenter said, "Tell Sophie that Tom is like her brother. She might understand and back off." Another commenter suggested, "You need to have a serious conversation with Luke and Amy. They need to know the potential consequences of their actions." Then OP replied, "I'm afraid of the fallout if I bring this up. It could destroy everything." Another commenter said, "It's better to face the truth than to let this situation escalate. You owe it to your daughter to protect her." Then OP replied, "I know, but it's so hard to take that step. I feel trapped." Another commenter said, "You need to get a DNA test to confirm your suspicions. It's the only way to know for sure." Then OP replied, "I've considered it, but I'm scared of what I might find out. It could change everything." Finally, a commenter said, "You have to do what's best for your daughter, even if it means facing some harsh truths. She deserves to know the truth." Then OP replied, "You're right. I need to find the courage to do what's necessary for her sake." Wow, 23andMe for Christmas. Maybe order a banjo too. Oh, about a year ago, I suggested we do one of those, just to see Luke's reaction. He was very staunchly against it, didn't want the government to have our DNA, kept saying ancestry tests were a scam anyway. I brought it up to Amy, and guess which one of us she agreed with? Ask her son when he's over if he wants to do one with you and the kids, just for fun. That could at least solve the mystery with the oldest and relieve the stress of siblings potentially getting together. Order the kits and get samples from the kids. She really only needs a sample from 2 kids, Tom specifically, and one of hers. If it's positive that they're related, she can assume they all are. If it's negative, she can stop stressing about them being a couple. Is your relationship with Luke really good? Because it needs to be for this. You gotta have time where you and Luke can discuss this and literally start with how you understand it's gonna create immediate tension and say you can't help but suspect something. The thing is, I think he's aware that I know. Assuming it's true, and I'm not imagining things, it's kind of been an unspoken reality for a while now. So what do you want for you and your kids if it is? Tom and Sophie not dating aside, how would you want to continue? Would you leave Luke? Maybe that seems dumb, but you've essentially got a family with 11 people in it. It seems to be functioning. Could you be involved in that? Apologies if I'm asking insulting questions. I'm not trying to, just genuinely curious as you've obviously thought this through a ton. I've kept it functioning this long, mostly through denial, if I'm being honest. But if things were to be proven true and brought to light, I don't know what I would do. Leaving him is the most logical solution, but our kids are still underage and still friends with Amy's kids. It's not like there's any path forward where I never see Luke and Amy again, even if I wanted that. I know what I need to do, and I've known it for a while, but it feels impossible. Now for the 3-day update. First of all, wow. I did not expect my post to get as much traction as it did. I was half worried that someone in my family or social circle might find it, especially when someone alerted me that the post had been shared to Facebook. But, as far as I can tell, no one in my family has seen it. I want to thank all of the kind commenters who wished me well. To those who were more frustrated with my indecision, I get it, but I was operating with an uncertain situation, and the stakes were incredibly high. I feel like no matter what choice I made, something could and likely would go wrong. I've spent the last 5 years imagining different scenarios based on different ways I could go about this if I ever decided to act on it. To everyone who was clamoring for an update, I have one for you. I previously said that I was going to do a secret DNA test, that I had decided on that course of action. In the end, I couldn't go through with it, and now I am regretting that, because the window to do so has essentially closed. I just felt like it would be out of line for me to do that to another person's child behind their back. Ethically, it was dicey. I've since consulted with my lawyer, as many commenters suggested, and she advised me against doing so, because no matter what the results were, it would make me look bad in a potential divorce proceeding. But I really wish I had done it anyway, and just not told anyone, because I really badly need to know, and I still don't know for sure. Likewise, I wanted to tell Sophie in confidence, but the more I thought about it, even that seemed over the line. Like I had no right to plant such ideas in her mind about her father without even talking to him first. So, what I ended up doing was confronting Luke and Amy. Many comments suggested this as well. I finally told both of them that we needed to have a serious talk. It felt counterproductive to approach just one of them because I figured they would tell the other about what happened in their own words before I could prepare my own. I wanted them both to hear what I had to say. Once all the kids were at school, I laid down all of my suspicions and the reasons. I made it clear how much I love both of them. But a combination of clues had led me to notice the similarities between Luke and Amy's children, and I didn't even list all of them in the original post. For example, Luke has been a sleepwalker in the past. So have Sophie, Tom, and Adam. I said over and over how much they meant to me and how I didn't want to believe it, but the thought had crept into my mind in the past. How I had dismissed it before, but now, with Tom and Sophie having crushes on each other, it became necessary to pose the question. So I asked if they had ever crossed the line, if Luke had ever been unfaithful, if there was even the slightest possibility that any of Amy's children were his. I was just trying not to cry. Well, they reacted exactly as I would have expected. Their responses were perfect and so very well rehearsed. I genuinely can't tell if it was honest emotion or powerful gaslighting. Amy was more upset than Luke, or at least more outwardly upset. She was angry, offended at the accusation. Luke just seemed heartbroken by it. Maybe they were just acting, but I don't know. Somehow, they had reasonable responses to all of the points I brought up. They asked questions I didn't know how to answer. I had never objected to them having alone time before. Why did it suddenly bother me now? Do Amy's children really resemble Luke that much? Or are things like hair color pretty basic traits to have in common? The whole family had always treated Amy and her kids as part of our unit, and I had previously commended Luke for stepping up and being a father to Amy's kids since they didn't have one. Why was I now saying it was a bad thing? What exactly did I want them to do? How could I think such a thing about them? Why had I waited so long to say something? Luke was more understanding than Amy. He respected my feelings, or at least he acted like he did. Amy appeared to feel more betrayed by what I said. I ended up apologizing several times, even though I'm not sure I did anything wrong. Luke also apologized for anything he'd done to indicate he was unfaithful. I asked Amy more pointedly that, if not Luke, who had fathered her children. She snapped back that it was none of my business, and I could tell she was in no mood to get personal or vulnerable with me after my accusations. I'm not proud to say that I lost my temper, and said that after everything we had done for her and her children, such information was not a lot to ask, and perhaps she owed it to us. I regretted the words as soon as I said them, but Amy shouted back that I had never done anything for her, that it was Luke and his parents who had kept her afloat all these years, not me. She went on a longer tirade about how I had always acted superior to her, which I don't believe I did, though it's possible that I gave off that vibe unintentionally. Luke did his best to calm her down, but the room was still fraught with tension. I don't know, Reddit, I just don't know. It's driving me to the edge of madness. There is a way to be certain, of course. Not certain of my husband's fidelity, but of the paternity of Amy's children. So I asked Luke, for my own peace of mind, for the sake of our daughter and for our family unit, if he could please get a DNA test done, a paternity test. I went on to say that I knew he disliked and distrusted such things, but that I really needed this. I could see the pain in Luke's eyes. Maybe it was an act, but he did seem genuinely hurt that I was asking for this, that him giving me his word that he had always been faithful was not enough for me. But he very reluctantly agreed to participate in a DNA test. Unfortunately, Amy did not, and that's where we hit a roadblock. I was afraid of this, but Amy was infuriated at the whole concept and told me in no uncertain terms that I would not be getting samples of her children's DNA, and basically told me to frick off for asking, several times in several variations. I pressed Luke, and honestly, he was a bit useless, but probably right. He tried to convince Amy, but she wouldn't hear of it, and he kind of shrugged to me when I pushed him for further support. Because he can't force her to get the tests done. If she refuses, that's really a dead end. Trust me, it is. I looked into this quite a bit and consulted with my lawyer. The problem is, Luke could, in theory, petition the court to demand a paternity test for Tom and the others. The issue is that to do this, he'd essentially be claiming he slept with Amy, and he believes her children to be his. That would be the version of events he'd be maintaining. But Luke has staunchly insisted that nothing ever happened with Amy, that he never cheated on me. Whether or not he's being honest about this is another story, but he'd essentially have to go on record and make a claim that he isn't prepared to make. He is quite certain the children aren't his, and he has no intention of fighting for custody of them. So no judge is going to compel Amy to submit samples of her children's DNA. Tom is also old enough that his consent would be a factor. If both he and Amy refuse to participate in the test, it's unlikely that Luke would have a case. He'd have to target one of Amy's younger children, like, say, one of the twins. But he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to take his best friend to court to prove something that, in his words, he already knows isn't true. Luke is asking me to please just let this go and trust him, because pursuing this will fracture everything. And according to my lawyer, it's not realistic anyway. For Luke to establish paternity, he would need to admit to an affair in the first place. And he's not doing that. And if he did, that would pretty much be all the proof I needed to be certain, even if I'd need more in a court case. I pestered him further about Tom and Sophie, insisted that I didn't want them dating. Luke agreed, and apparently Amy still agrees. Luke plans to have a talk with Tom and activate protective Papa Bear mode. Among other things, he's going to remind Tom that in a couple of months, when he turns 18, him being intimate with Sophie will literally be a crime. I wouldn't actually press charges against him, as I know he'd never do anything against Sophie's will, but I'm not above implying the threat. Thankfully, Luke isn't either. I did ask him if he'd be open to potentially swiping a sample of Tom's DNA to do a private paternity test, but he was very hesitant about the idea. Like me, he viewed it as unethical. He also pointed out that if we were to do this and Amy found out, it would mean the end of our friendship with her, most likely. Things are, Luke believes, still in a salvageable state where Amy and I could reconcile and become friends again, and I can see how much he wants this to happen. But if I did a DNA test on Tom behind Amy's back and she found out, I think she would hit the roof, and I wouldn't entirely blame her, though I'd be very interested to see the results. Luke ended up going to see Amy and spending the night. I know all of you are cringing and throwing up your hands, and trust me, I wasn't happy about it. That was a very long conversation, but he was adamant that he needed to perform damage control, so they spent the night together. With Luke maintaining that nothing happened, I did not sleep a wink, and I kept texting him for updates. So far as I can tell, Amy will cool off, but she needs a little time. Luke and I talked things over when he came back the next morning. It was an emotionally fulfilling conversation, and we ended up agreeing to take the kids, our kids, not Amy's, to visit their grandparents for a few days. It was an impromptu visit, but we've done it before, and they were delighted to have us. I just really wanted our family to spend some time together away from Amy's side of the family, so to speak. I always love getting to see my in-laws. I'll refer to them as Jim and Kat. I know Reddit is famous for stories about the Mael from hell, but in my life that couldn't be further from the truth. I feel safe with them. To the point that, when they took notice of how distant Luke and I were from each other, I finally relented and confessed my fears. I told them of my anxiety that Amy and Luke were having an affair, and that Amy's children might be his. Here's where things got a little bit interesting. When I told them what I was feeling, Kat just gave Jim this pointed look and did a big dramatic sigh. So it turns out, Kat has had similar misgivings to mine and genuinely suspected over the years that Luke and Amy were closer than they'd ever admit, that they had crossed the line in the past. Jim, on the other hand, simply refuses to even consider the idea. He has always insisted that Kat is seeing things that aren't there. He maintains that Luke and Amy are like siblings and would never do such a thing. Kat thinks his stance on this is naive, and that even if she and Jim had taken Amy in and loved her like a daughter, that didn't mean Luke viewed her as a sister or that she viewed him as a brother. But Jim just continued to insist that this is what they are and had always been. I could tell that he and Kat have already had this conversation before, and they kept going in circles, with Kat getting exasperated. She pointed out that, surrogate siblings or not, Luke and Amy were not actually brother and sister, so nothing was stopping them from being physical together if they felt a mutual attraction. At that point, Jim just sighed and walked away from the conversation. So yes, Kat has privately wondered if Amy's children weren't fathered by Luke, which is part of why she has always treated them as her grandchildren, which was never something that I minded, to be clear. I also don't mind that Kat never voiced these concerns to me. She had no proof, and she saw far less of Luke and Amy's closeness in our adult lives than I did. As for the kids, they're doing all right. I don't know what Amy told her children, but I think the general consensus, the official version of events, is that Amy and I had a fight and need a break from each other. That's what Luke and I told our children, and when pressed for more information, Luke did defend me and shut down the questions, saying it wasn't their business. I don't know if Amy kept to that version of events, but my children and her children have each other's phone numbers and social media, so they've presumably still been in contact over the last 2 days. I think my kids would have kept Amy's kids in the loop on the updates, and if Amy had told them anything else significant, they would have relayed that information to my kids. After all, we know Sophie and Tom are very close. I did try and talk to Sophie about that more, but the timing was off, because Sophie rejected my counsel and interpreted my reinforced reluctance as being attributed to my fight with Amy. She maintained that she wasn't dating Tom. To what degree that's actually true, I don't know, but she was going to remain close friends with him. And while she isn't usually a disobedient child, she made it very clear that she was putting her foot down on this one. And to be fair, I can't really justify trying to separate them or forbid them from being friends. They've known each other for years. Luke has my back on them not being allowed to date, but he wouldn't have my back on them not hanging out anymore. I wish I had a more definitive update. If anything significant happens in the next few days, I can let you guys know. I'm mostly just kicking myself for not having done the secret test, even for my own peace of mind, as now I feel like I'm locked out of the only way to get definitive proof one way or the other. Now for some comments. First commenter said, "They spent the night together? OP, come on. That's not acceptable. They're definitely a couple." Another commenter added, "Honestly, do you really think he's sleeping on the sofa? Why is he sleeping over there if there is nothing going on? You go to your friend's house and talk, and then you go back home to your wife and kids. WTF? What about your kids? He doesn't give a shoot about any of you. Time to have another chat with the lawyer, and you really need to get more angry about this. You are way too understanding. This woman has wrecked all your lives, and even your in-laws have been suspecting the same all along." Then another commenter said, "Luke and Amy are a couple, and OP is the side piece at this point." Another added, "He had to do damage control by staying the night with her? That's because she's his girlfriend. I really don't see any other interpretation of that." One more commenter shared, "Seriously, husband knows wife has been living this belief that he's cheating with friend, and rather than stay with wife to reassure her and do damage control with his wife, he finds it more important to stay with friend and do damage control with her, leaving wife alone all night. That's so gross." I absolutely do not believe Amy and Luke. Amy is being gross and could put this all behind them so easily by just doing the DNA test. She wouldn't even have to tell her kids why, but adamantly refuses. And Amy can't understand OP's thought process or reasoning at all, instead just explodes? With no good defense other than the gaslighting? Yeah, no idiots here. I hope this story is either fake exaggerated or OP gets the truth soon and can move on. Then OP replied to the comments, "Am I the idiot for blasting my parents on social media after they forgot to buy me a plane ticket to their wedding?" Now for the post. I know this seems like a weird situation, but I just feel so angry and depressed that I feel the need to vent, even if no one is listening. So I, female 17, was recently forgotten about on the day of my parents' wedding. My parents have been together for about 25 years, but they never actually got married. That's why when my dad, male 50, proposed to my mother, female 49, on their anniversary, which they have always celebrated on the date my mother found out she was pregnant with my eldest sister, even though they were already together before. Everyone, including me, was elated and celebrated the occasion with great joy. This happened all the way back in February. They immediately jumped into wedding planning, deciding very early on a small event in Hawaii with just the closest family and friends for an intimate ceremony. Almost immediately, my mother asked my sister, female 25, to be her maid of honor, and my dad asked my brother, male 22, to be his groomsman. I wasn't surprised or offended by this. My sister had always been a mommy's girl, and they both enjoyed spending time with each other, shopping and socializing, so they had a very close bond. The same goes for my father and brother. They always played football together and messed around with cars. My father even trained my brother's team for a while in middle school. That had always left me as the odd one out. I tried to insert myself into my family's hobbies and groups that they had within our home, but was always rebuffed. Maybe they could sense that my interest in their activities wasn't all that genuine, or maybe they just didn't care. Either way, I was used to being the last and least important member of my family. Mom had sis and dad had bro, my parents had each other, and my two siblings were closer to each other than they ever were to me, leaving me very lonely and isolated in my own home. During the preparation for the wedding, initially, it was suggested that I be the flower girl, but my sister thought that role would be more appropriate for her daughter, 3F, so that idea was quickly tossed away. Later on, My maternal grandmother suggested that I might read a poem or do a little bit of a speech during the ceremony. But both my parents refused because they wanted the wedding to be low-key, and they didn't think a cheesy and sappy speech would fit their vision, their literal words. I was still okay with all of this, even though it hurt to know I would be the only member of the family to not actually be part of the wedding party or have any role at all on the day. As the day approached, my parents and siblings got more and more caught up in all the wedding planning. I noticed my mom didn't invite me dress shopping, and that whenever they would have discussions about the venue or the event, I was left out. So I decided to see if they would realize that I wasn't being involved at all and kept quiet, waiting for them to ask me anything about the wedding, but that never happened. The wedding was set for 3 weeks ago, at the end of August. The day before the departure, my mother casually asked if I had my luggage ready because we couldn't be late to the airport. I bluntly told her that I hadn't prepared anything. She got confused for a second and then snapped at me for not being prepared. I then asked her if I even had a ticket, and her face went pale. Yep, they hadn't even bought me a ticket, and I'm not even sure if I had a room or any accommodations once there. Even though I was the only person in my family without a stable income, I work as a part-time babysitter. My parents had bought first-class tickets for my siblings and the couple of other friends that were attending the wedding, but had forgotten me. My mom told me not to make a big deal out of it, and that they could just find me a low-cost ticket last minute from a cheap airline. But I just replied by asking her, "Then what? Do I even have a dress for the ceremony?" She went with Sis to buy hers and all the other female guests months ago, but I wasn't included. That's when my father came in and just told me to suck it up and that I've never been a girly girl, so I could just wear whatever. I got mad at this because, even though I'm not the most feminine girl on the planet, I would have loved to be included in such an important part of my parents' wedding. And it was about the fact that I was excluded from literally everything that had been going on for months. We all got into a fight with them, calling me entitled and accusing me of making myself small intentionally so they would forget me. Like that is a valid excuse for ignoring a child. They ended up telling me that if I was going to keep this attitude, I might as well skip the whole thing altogether, to which I responded with a defiant, "Fine," and went to my room. The next morning, they all left for Hawaii without me. The ceremony was really small, but they all posted loads of pictures on Instagram and Facebook about how perfect and magical that whole week was being. People realized quickly that I wasn't in any of the photos and asked my parents why, to which they replied that unfortunately, I had caught infection 19 before the trip and had to stay behind. My blood boiled at this. I don't know why this was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, but it was. I decided to take an infection 19 test and published a picture of myself holding the negative test and captioned it, "Not sick at all, just forgotten." I tagged everyone that had questioned my absence from the trip and the wedding in the picture, and for good measure, also every person invited to it. I also wrote in the comments about how my parents had literally forgotten about anything to do with me until the day before parting, and how they actually uninvited me. Most people were on my side, and others couldn't believe it and thought there must be something more to the story than what I was saying. But one thing is for certain. I completely ruined my parents' wedding, and their day was overshadowed by my confession. At first, I felt quite satisfied with myself for standing up on my own, but after a barrage of messages from my family calling me every name in the book, and later, when they came back, them furiously attacking me for my immature actions and my spoiled behavior, my pride deflated quickly, and I began to feel awful. I hate my family, and I hate being in this house, but I'm a minor and can't leave just yet. I do feel like I could have handled the situation better though, and now I feel so depressed that I'm second-guessing everything I did, from not speaking up before to the way I exposed them. I also feel guilty for the lack of connection between all of my family and me, and maybe I could have done more? So, am I the idiot for ruining my parents' wedding when they forgot about me? Now for a few important comments. Front Rip 464 said, NTA. Your parents fricked up. They know it. Your siblings also fricked up. They also know it, and you weren't making them look bad with your social media posts. You were correcting a lie. I hope you are able to qualify for a full-ride scholarship because something tells me you don't have much of a college fund, if any. Lulu9902 added, they spent the college fund on the first-class plane tickets for everyone but OP. Disastrous B1557 chimed in. Bold of you to assume there was ever a college fund in the first place. Then Obrina98 commented, now for the post, not the idiot. Can you move in with grandma? Their history of rebuffing you whenever you try to participate with them says this wasn't a one-off. It's like they don't even consider you family. No judge is going to force you back to their house at 17. If you have a place to go, get your things and your documents and go. Commenter 1. I have a similar family dynamic to OP, although I'm the oldest. I wasn't asked to go on family vacations. My birthday was always forgotten about. If my mom and younger siblings wanted to go out to eat for family dinner while I was at work, they would leave and not say a word to me. OP, not the idiot. Don't let them make you feel guilty. As soon as I could, I moved out. Didn't say a word to anyone in my immediate family, just packed a bag and was gone. I'm no contact with everyone but my little sister, and even she is on probation with regards to visits and hanging out. OP's response, I'm sorry for you and that we are on the same boat. I want to move out, but I have no place to go now. I had a summer job besides babysitting, and I've been saving up some money, but I live in a very expensive city, and I need another job before I can plan anything. Commenter 1. Be strong. Don't let them get under your skin. Even if you have to get roommates or move in with a friend, leave as soon as you're comfortable with finances. There are Facebook groups and such for looking for roommates, especially in HCOL areas. OP's response, I know that's what I should be doing. I do have a friend that is moving to a studio apartment near our college, but I don't have a job at the moment and I don't want to be a burden to her. She and I are close, so I'm sure she would offer for me to move in with her, but I don't want to be a burden. Also, I don't have a job at the moment, so I couldn't pay rent, so that's something else I need to do at the moment. Now for the judgment, not the idiot. Now for the 4 days later update. Hi everyone, I wanted to write an update earlier, but I'm still kind of a mess at the moment, but I figured since my post had such an overwhelming response and so many people commented and sent me messages that I should write about the latest developments. First of all, let me start by thanking all that commented on my post and shared their own experiences or points of view on my situation. Thank you so much. A few days ago, I could barely find the energy to get out of bed, and my family's comments had made me really believe that I was guilty for all that had passed. But after seeing the responses to my post and all the support you guys were giving me, I felt somewhat reaffirmed in my actions and feelings towards my family. I'm still fighting the feelings of guilt and depression, but whenever I start to spiral, I think on how much this community of strangers has had my back, and I try to calm myself down with your words. Thanks to your input and advice, I finally decided to call my grandma and tell her the full story. Just to clarify a point before going on, I said this in the comments, but I feel like I should put it here also. My grandma 77F did not attend the wedding. She lives several states away and has mobility issues, so she doesn't travel anymore. We went to visit her around Easter, and that's when she commented that I might read a poem at the ceremony, but that was the last time I saw her in person before all this. She's always been very loving to me and has called out my parents in the past for their favoritism, but is hard for her to play a more active role in my upbringing since she lives so far, and I am always worried about bothering her due to her age and health condition. She had a minor stroke a few years back and is now back to normal, but I still worry. Anyway, I called her and laid out everything that had happened with the wedding and how my parents didn't even buy me a ticket to go with them. She came to the same conclusion that most commenters did when I told her that it was simply impossible that they had forgotten and that they did it on purpose. I cried on the phone with her, laying out how I was feeling, how this has been going on forever, how I feel in the aftermath, and most importantly, about my need to get out. She was extremely sweet and comforting to me and told me that I had nothing else to worry about because she had my back 100%, and told me to take it easy but make plans for my future and that she'd help me. After that conversation, which lasted about 2 hours, I felt better, and I decided to listen to her and start moving to figure something out for the next school year. I have a friend who is going to lease a studio next to our future campus. She has a great relationship with her parents, but she has 5 younger siblings and wants to be more independent, so that's why she decided to move out. I asked her if I could move in with her temporarily and that I would pay her rent as soon as I got a job. She immediately accepted and told me not to worry about rent or anything else until I was in a better position. And we had a good cry together when I told her all about my parents' wedding incident. So this all happened a couple days ago, and I was planning on doing the update then. But my grandma called my parents and my siblings to lecture them about how they were treating me. My brother just sent me a text afterwards with a half-hearted apologize, saying that he didn't know I wasn't included and that he just thought I wouldn't have fun on the trip. And then I posted the pic just to create drama. My sister, on the other hand, berated me and told me that I kept trying to make public my own problems and pinning them on my family when they are all innocent. It has been weird with my parents ever since they came back from the trip, and at first, they berated me and were furious with me, and after that, we've just been ignoring each other. After my grandma called them, they came into my room telling me that if I wanted to put this whole issue to rest, I should shut up about it, and that this could all had already blown over if only I had kept my mouth shut. I just asked them to leave my room, and then I called my grandma again to tell her what had gone down. She then told me that she and my uncle had bought plane tickets to come down to see me. This was something that I was actually scared about because my grandma's health is not the best, and this kind of effort is a lot for her. And I know how complicated it is for her to get on a plane, so I tried to dissuade her from coming and told her everything would be okay, but she wouldn't listen and told me that she was long overdue a conversation with my parents and that she wanted to see me. I'm stressed for her, and I feel again like I forced her to take a long, uncomfortable trip because of me, and that maybe I should have dealt with this myself. I do want to see her, and I wish for nothing more than to hug her right now, but I'm worried about her. At least my uncle, Mom's older brother, is coming with her, but I hope she doesn't exhaust herself or nothing happens to her because that would break me. They arrive tomorrow and have not informed my parents of their trip. My grandma asked me to keep it until she gets here. I hope she is able to make my parents see the mistake in their actions, or, at the very least, help me break the news to them that I'm moving out very soon. And I plan on being no contact with them. I don't know. I'm worried about her having to do so much for me and bothering her, but I also appreciate and love her so much for doing all this for me. Now for a few comments. Commenter 2. Wow, your grandma is amazing. It's so great that she has your back and is willing to stand up to your parents. And don't worry about her making the trip. She sounds like a strong and determined woman. Plus, you deserve to have someone on your side who will fight for you. Keep us updated on how everything goes with your family, and remember, you have a whole community here to support you. Best of luck with your future plans. Now for a few comments. She should use her oxygen tank to beat some sense into them. No, you're not the jerk. Your parents should have never forgotten about you on their special day, and it's not your responsibility to cover for their mistake. Kudos to you for standing up for yourself. Replace forgotten about with excluded. I'm sorry OP's parents and siblings are POS, but that won't change. OP is on the right track. Move out, don't look back, and live your best life moving forward. Now for the 4-day update. Hello. Sorry for not having re-updated sooner or commented. As you can imagine, if you've seen my last posts, it's been a busy week to say the least. There's been a lot of people messaging me and commenting on the post, and I haven't had time to answer to no one until today, and I'm sorry for that. You all have been so helpful and caring for me and my story, and it's been truly eye-opening and terrifying to see how many people have gone through similar stories of neglect and abuse. And I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to send some kind words to this internet stranger. This update will be long, so sorry about that. I'm just going to continue where I left off. So my grandma called me to tell me she was coming here to see me and help me out. I was very stressed about it because my grandma has a very hard time traveling. So for her to take this trip meant that she would be under enormous stress, and I felt responsible for her since I was the one that called her. She arrived early Monday morning with my uncle, and I went to get her at the airport. NGL, it was a very intense and emotional moment, and as soon as I saw her, I ran to her arms and broke down, sobbing. I don't even know if I was able to tell her anything at that moment because of how hard I was crying, and I had so many things to say. Thank you for coming, for being so good to me, for having my back. I'm sorry to have made you take this trip. I feel awful at home. I don't know if my parents love me, but I know you do. Am I an affair child? I truly was hit with all of this, plus the guilt and the anxiety all at once when I saw her. But she held me tight in her arms, telling me everything was going to be okay. My uncle hugged us as well. I don't know how long we stayed like this, but it must have been a while until my uncle told me we should get going. We grabbed a cab and went to their hotel. My grandma had teary eyes, and I could feel her breathing heavily, which scared me, but she kept hugging me and smiling all the way. She had reserved a double room so I could stay with her for these days, and once they were settled in and I was more calm, we sat down and I poured everything out for them. The years of neglect and the emotional abuse, how I was feeling miserable after the trip, but also for years now, how my parents have been trying to make me feel guilty for all of this that has happened, how I was scared about my future, but my one priority at the moment now was to move out of that house, even at the expense of my schoolwork. How I have made arrangements to move in with my friend, and I was looking for a job. And I told them about this post and how some people thought I might be an affair child and that I was beginning to question that as well. It was a lot, and I could tell they were both really affected by what I was saying, but they kept comforting me and making me feel safe to open up to them. After I unloaded all my concerns with them, my grandma reassured me that I had nothing to worry about anymore and that she would be here for me always. First of all, she reassured me that I was not an affair child and that both my parents were thrilled when my mother got pregnant with me, and that she knew the ultimate deal breaker for my mom was cheating, and she believed it was the same for my father. Apparently, the favoritism began showing when I was around 3 to 4 years old, when my parents were constantly complaining about having a young kid in the house, and they were bothered because they could take my older siblings to their stuff, but not me. And I was also very shy and a bit of a crybaby, which they had no patience with, and made me very different from my siblings. She told me that she knew that my parents had saved more than enough for my college. They're really well off. So, that had never been a concern for me until now, thinking they might pull the funds away from me for my education, but that if they tried to not pay for my schooling, she would take care of it, and that she just wouldn't let me drop out because of money concerns. She also told me she would help me with rent and an allowance to move out. She was very generous, and I thanked her for it all, but I also told her that this experience had been eye-opening in the sense that I never realized how privileged I had been economically all my life. For all their faults, my parents have pampered me, money-wise, all my life. I went to private school, I have a rather large monthly allowance, I've had a card for years now, and they have never objected to any of my expenses. Seeing the stories here, I realized how good I've had it so far, and how, being dependable on them all my life, made me so exposed to losing everything. And I want to be independent now, not just from my parents, but from everyone. I feel like I need to learn to stand up on my own. Writing this, and having just read all the stories of people in truly awful situations, makes me feel like I've been a spoiled brat all my life to be Aik. She insisted on me accepting my help until I don't need it anymore, and I accepted that, but I'll still will look for a job and try to make it out on my own. We relaxed for a while in the hotel, because we were all exhausted from the morning, but in the afternoon, we grabbed a cab and went to my house. My parents were extremely surprised to see my grandma and uncle with me when I entered the door. But before they could say anything, my grandma told me to go pack all my essentials while they talked to them. I rushed upstairs, and I could hear my grandma and uncle berating my parents for all that they had put me through. At first, I also heard my parents trying to defend themselves, but eventually they quieted down. When I came downstairs with 2 suitcases and my backpack full to the brim with everything important that I had in my room, they were all in the living room. My father was beet red, and my mother was sobbing like a child. And when she saw me, she extended her arms on my direction saying she was sorry, but I just said, "Save it," with the coldest tone I could muster. And my dad said that I didn't have to be jerk, to which both my uncle and grandma told him to shut up. I left the house at that moment and waited for the cab outside. In the hotel, my grandma reassured me that I wouldn't have to go back to them and that they told her my college tuition was never in question for them. They had planned to throw me an extravagant birthday party to make up for the wedding mess and were going to be giving me a car as an apology for everything. But my grandma was having none of that because it was pretty obvious to her that they were only trying to save face and they were coming up with these things on the fly. She said a party and a car would not make up for all that they have put me through. Apparently, the moment that broke my mother was when she told her that I had even questioned my paternity, and she started crying then. But my grandma told her that what else could they expect when they had excluded me repeatedly from all family events since I was a child. She told me that she would make sure they made the payments to my school unless I preferred to completely cut ties with them and have her pay until I can pay myself. I asked her to do that. I felt bad because I feel like it's not her responsibility, but I truly don't want anything else from my parents anymore. Although my grandma is pretty well off herself, she's not as wealthy as my parents, but she reassured me that everything is all right and that everything going to me would be taken away from my mom's inheritance. So the next day, we went with my friend, her parents, and grandma to the studio where we were planning to move. Immediately upon arriving, my grandma said absolutely not. I knew from pictures that the studio was very small and dirty, but we saw water damage and mold in the bathroom and kitchenette, and there was also rust in the little old appliances. I knew all of this beforehand, but I figured I could live with that, at least for a while. But the thing that the adults pointed out that actually made me and my friend change our minds was the fact that this studio was street level in a bad neighborhood, in a building that didn't seem particularly safe and had bullet holes on the walls, which I didn't even know what those were until my friend's dad pointed it out. So Grandma and my friend's parents said they would look for an apartment for us in a better location and they'd help cover the costs. Both my friend and I want to be independent, but we realize that with our most likely minimum wage jobs in such a high-demand area, we won't be able to find anything better on our own. So the plan is we're going to look for a 2-bedroom apartment, and my friend and I are going to pay what we had previously planned for the studio, and her parents and my grandma will cover the difference. I know it is still quite spoiled of me to expect that help from my grandma, but after seeing the studio in person, I truly wouldn't have felt safe there. My friend's parents, who were somewhat aware of what I was going through, told me that I could move in with them until we find a nice apartment, to which I'm extremely grateful, since Grandma is going back in a couple of days, and I've been staying in the hotel with her ever since. Apparently, my friend, her parents, and my grandma spoke about this before coming to me to make sure I had some safe place to stay until we move into the apartment, which is still to be found. I teared up a little as I thanked them, seeing how people were rallying behind me to offer help. Since then, I've been moving some of the stuff I had left at my parents' and setting my space in my friends'. My mom keeps crying and apologizing every time I go back, and even my father has said sorry, but I remain distant and cold towards them. My sister called and said that our mother was a mess and that I was a weenie for what I had done, but before she could say anything else, I hung up the phone and blocked her. I was going to block my brother as well when I saw that he had sent me a very long message apologizing again and again for all that he has done to me and for not realizing our parents were treating me so poorly. He says he's been doing a lot of self-reflection in the days since Grandma called and realized that he had been in the wrong for assuming I wasn't on the trip because I wouldn't want to go, and for just allowing my parents to exclude me for all those years. I sent a brief reply thanking him for his words, but telling him I need space and I was not ready to accept his apology. I feel like he might be genuine because he has never been nasty to me the way my sister has, just aloof towards me, but I also feel like I need to keep him away for the moment. Also, keeping a bridge up with my family feels like the right thing to do right now, that everything is so fresh. Maybe in the future, he will show me he's just as nasty as everyone else, and I'd block him. But as long as he respects my boundaries, I feel better not cutting him off completely. I've also made an appointment with a therapist who specializes in neglected teens, and I have my first preliminary visit next week, again funded by my grandma, which makes me feel even more eager to find a job ASAP to take the burden off of her. Even if she tells me time and time again she is happy to do all of this for me. That's where things stand right now. I don't know if I'll update again, maybe when I start classes or move to the apartment. But right now, I'm just trying to enjoy some time with my grandma and my uncle and learn to grow and get rid of these feelings of guilt and depression that have been plaguing me for so long. I want to thank once again all of this community for being so nice and helpful to me, and all of you who have messaged me with your own personal stories of getting kicked out or having to learn how to make it on your own at a too early age. You've helped me feel a lot less alone and made me realize that things can get better if I work hard for it. I feel kind of spoiled for having such an amazing support system with my grandma, uncles, and my friend, but you all are right. Reaching out has been the absolute best decision I could have taken, and opening up about my feelings to those who love me and to all of you internet friends has absolutely saved me. So thank you. Really, I'm more grateful than words can ever tell. Now for a few comments. Commenter Ivy Inferno said, "I'm happy for you that you got precious help from some family members and friends, and the therapist is an excellent idea. It can help so much coping with those kinds of traumas." Then Pride of Cape Town added, "Best wishes for a bright future, and please make sure you take your passport, birth certificate, social insurance, etc. with you from their house. P.S. Can your grandma please adopt me?" Finally, Goldilaf said, "Right? What an angel. We all need a grandma like this in our lives." Am I the idiot for postponing my wedding after finding out my fiancé shared videos of me with his friends? Hi everyone, I hope you guys can give me some insight and help with this situation. Me, female 24, and my STBH, male 24, have been together since we were both 17. He was my first everything. First boyfriend, first kiss, he took my virginity. Literally my first for everything. He proposed after I graduated nursing school, and I've never been happier. I know everyone says this, but there's literally been zero problems and zero red flags. I wanted to play this game he has on his iPad because I've become borderline addicted to it. As I was playing it, I saw a text from his group chat pop up. I ignored it, then another came up with one of his friends saying, "I'd marry a BJQ." I got confused, so I decided to open it. This group chat is only men. Some are my childhood friends too, and we hang out with these people multiple times a week. My husband sent a pros and cons list about me. I copied it, sent it to me, deleted the evidence. Here's the list. Pros: sexually eager and BJ whenever I want. Big breasts, big butt, big thighs, and a flat stomach. Doesn't let herself become frumpy and ugly. Funny and smart. Good cook and baker. Cons: has a lot of animals. Doesn't always keep our place clean. Laughs too loud. Vulgar and crude. Has bad breath in the mornings. Spends too much time at the gym. Is the list that bad? It made my stomach drop, and I've just felt this impending dread ever since discovering it. The cons aren't that bad, but it feels so objectifying with the pros list. And as I scrolled up and read more, the worse it got. He talked to them about how he thinks I lied about being a virgin when we met, because I'm too eager and wanting to try too many things. And even bragged about how he has a folder on his phone of videos and photos of me and us. Everybody dared him to send it, but he said no, but how can I be sure he didn't send it anyways, and deleted the evidence? He even talked about how there was a week he tested to see how many BJ he could get out of me by simply asking for them, and decided to stop because he started to feel bad. There was more, but I can't write it out. I feel so gross and sad. I talk about him in a such different way. It feels like he only sees me as an intimacy object, and I see him as my other half. I've opted out of friend hangouts and have distanced myself from him. He's noticed and has been trying to find out what's wrong, but I'm not even ready to tell him. I want to postpone our wedding until we can figure this out, or if it's even salvageable. Am I overreacting? Please, any and all advice is welcomed. Now for a few comments. First commenter. I don't think you should ever marry anyone so willing to humiliate you. He doesn't sound like he has much love or respect for you. Not a good way to start a lifelong partnership. Second commenter. My thoughts exactly. This is her fiancé, soon-to-be husband, and he's discussing you this way with his friends. I'm appalled at his behavior. Your fiancé husband should be your best friend, your confidant, your soft place to fall, not someone who discusses how many BJs he can get out of you. I hate it when men discuss their intimacy lives. This is something very personal. Cancel the wedding, move out if you are living together, and start your life new. You deserve someone who treats you with respect. Third commenter. I agree with all of this, but before doing so, delete his entire folder of photos and videos, clear the deleted items folder and anywhere it might be backed up. He might decide to share them after all. Fourth commenter. This man has no respect for you. It's not okay for someone who is supposed to love you to talk about you in a degrading and objectifying way. And the others in the GC are not your friends. If anything, you are now underreacting. Postponing the wedding is the minimum you should do. Don't be fooled into staying with him because he was your first and you've put so much time and energy into the relationship. You deserve better. You have plenty of time to find a partner who respects and loves you. Not the idiot, but you may end up being one to yourself if you don't address this and demand better for yourself, even if it is with someone else. Fifth commenter. Bad breath in the morning? Like a normal person? I bet if she stopped spending too much time at the gym, he'd complain she's letting herself go. Doesn't keep the place clean? He could do that too. Eager to try new things means she wasn't a virgin? Or maybe she wants to have new experiences to figure out what she likes, since she doesn't know if she's inexperienced. Like literally none of what he listed was cons, and now he might lose what sounds like an awesome woman. Judgment, not the idiot. Now for the 2-day update, I wanted to say thank you to everyone that gave me their advice and input, and also a thank you to my friend for letting me post on her Reddit account. I've never even used Reddit, so this whole experience has been wild. She suggested I use it due to her using it, and told me she got a lot of great legal advice as well as emotional support, so again, thank you all. Anyways, my STBX left for a work-related trip and won't be returning till the 7th. I decided to go through his iPad even more, and the things I found were absolutely appalling. I can't even believe I considered staying. You all opened my eyes, and what I found really solidified it. I searched the group chat more. They didn't talk about me a whole lot, but every time they did, it was so degrading and wildly inappropriate. I found out it was my STBX that coined me as BJQ, and I was right. He has sent videos of me. It was just videos of me performing oral, but still, I wanted those to stay between us. I also found his X and Reddit account. It's nothing but gangbang corn and cuck fetish corn. All the corn is one girl and multiple men. I don't want to read too much into that, but with how everything is falling, I'm scared he was going to try to share me with the men in this group chat. Which, yes, I am open-minded, but I am firm on no threesomes and no sharing of any sort. He knows this. I also found out he calls me Butterface. He constantly complains that I don't lean into my femininity and dress more girly. He said he hates my tattoos and piercings and said they're excessive. There's so much more, and I'm just devastated. I don't even know where to begin. I don't want to tell my family because I'm so humiliated and sad. Do I collect evidence from his iPad and take it to a lawyer? Do I start moving out while he's away? I'm just so lost right now. Thank you to everybody that helped open my eyes. Now for a few comments. First commenter, depending on where you are, sharing those images, videos could be a crime. Go to the police. Don't delete anything yet. Wait until you've spoken to the police and then factory reset that witch. Second commenter, if it's an iPad, the files also need to be removed from the cloud. Otherwise, he could still potentially access them. Third commenter, his friends probably saved them on their devices as well and can distribute them if they wanted. What a nightmare. OP needs a lawyer now. Fourth commenter, Butterface equals everything, but her face equals immediately break up. Get moved out ASAP while he's gone. Don't let him know until he gets back. Move your stuff to a storage unit, right? That means her body is great, but her face. It's a disgusting thing to say about someone you are in a romance with. About anyone, actually. Or am I mistaken?